What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Mike. What is it? The Mike Check podcast.
You got it.
Took me a little bit. It's been a little bit since we've done an episode. Lots of crazy stuff's been going on. Sam, how you doing? First off.
Doing great. Loving the hockey we've been getting. I think it's been really quality.
Oh God, yeah. It's been. I think for me being in a bad mood last time we did this show, I think it was just because I wanted to close, series here and there. But, kind of looking back at it, it seems like, yeah, even though teams are winning by 2 goals or whatever it may be, I mean, it's still just really fun to watch. I mean, it's really competitive, pretty fair across the board too. I mean, it could really go either way, just depending on how the game is played and which team's up at certain points. It's really anybody's game. So, what are your thoughts though of just the end of the last round before we go into the conference championship?
One thing I've taken away is how long those first two series feel compared to these last two.
Yeah.
Because, they seem like such big steps for teams like Toronto, who won their first round series and everything felt great. They were 25% of the way to done. And
Yeah.
they got bounced by a team now that seems like they're having a deep playoff run in Florida. They're only halfway there. So when you look at it like that, it feels really like the hard part is over, but really you're just beginning.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, this is the interesting part because this is where you start to see bodies like take a toll.
Yeah.
Just based off of the travel schedule that they have, the type of games that they're playing, how competitive, how physical it is, and just the wear and tear these guys have on their bodies from a full NHL season, and then just this giant increase in play as soon as you hit the playoffs. So this is kind of like you look at teams now going forward and you're like, who has the most energy? Who can play smart hockey and not start to overthink simple things in their head? That's what I think is so interesting too. And then also you look at, your star players out there who can handle the heat, who can take over games when they're supposed to, and who cannot. So I think it's just been a phenomenal playoffs this year. And the best thing about it too is it's a good mix of different teams this year too, which is awesome. Who would have thought that this would have been our final four going into this
I
season?
love
This
it.
is
I love it.
absolutely insane, and I'm all for it because I think that's what grows the game too, is to have different organizations just really thrive and be able to make good pushes. I think that's going to just grow the game, if anything, and just really for a team or for a sport that people say is under the radar. I don't really think it is. I mean, maybe I'm biased just being a big hockey guy growing up, but uh, you get to see some phenomenal athletes out there, and just watching them grind it out and all the extracurriculars they have to go through in a game. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, as fans of two small market teams for ourselves, I think we understand the value of these hockey deep playoff runs in these untraditional markets. I know just for myself, I'm hearing from friends and family that never watch hockey. They're telling me, "Hey, these Panthers, they're doing some great stuff. The
Yeah.
stadium is electric in a way that I haven't seen it before. It's just all around such a great thing to grow the game, is to get these teams getting going."
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we can kind of, if you want to round out each and every series based off of the last couple games in the
Mm,
previous round, let's just go right to your Panthers, man. I mean,
let's do
because
it.
they were done pretty early. They went to 5 games, almost had the sweep, but I mean, this team just. Because here's the thing, Toronto's a good team. They're not as physical. They don't have the players that can go out and you could be relying on for them to throw the body, or just really, if both teams don't have the high notch skill, like they're not a team that's really going to come out on top. I mean, they just need their skill to provide and produce points out there. They ran into a really hot Florida team, a really, really hot Florida team. So for me, what I got out of it is this is great for Florida because I feel like they've been going through a gauntlet of just getting to where they are
Mm,
now. I mean, obviously taking on Boston in that first round, they're a big physical team. They've been known to play like that for years. So seeing them get through that in 7 and then finish this past series in 5, get a little break, get these boys like, not that they're done, not that the tank is empty, but just let them get a little energy back before they go out into, the biggest series that Florida Panthers history, essentially. So what are your thoughts on them getting to the conference championship?
Well, I think when the series started, I think looking back, you could tell that the difference between these two teams wasn't talent necessarily, but it was preparedness.
Yeah.
Right. When you came into the series, you would think, Toronto just coming off the monkey off their shoulder. They just got past their first round opponent, beat Tampa. They must be feeling good. But they weren't really prepared for the playoff style hockey to continue. Right. They thought their challenge was done and that was the end of it. And, I think they underperformed definitely. But when you look at the way the games played out, you look at what Florida did when things got a little bit tough, right? When Toronto went on a huge run, had a huge shift here or there, got some real zone possession time, and just completely dominated the game for stretches, which they did do. Florida was able to respond in kind, right? They got great rushes, great chances. They were able to put together solid minutes of play and fight back. And Toronto, for all their talent, they just weren't able to get that edge that was needed. And that's why the series is over in 5, not because of a huge talent disparity. I think Toronto is probably the more talented team on paper. They have, at the very least, the higher end talent, right?
Yeah.
But, Florida came into this. They knew from the get-go what they needed to do from day one of the season for things to change around there in terms of playoff performance. Toronto, and we've talked about it last week. We talked about it many times on the show. Is just the reason we were so confident for Florida going into Game 5 last week was because they showed an ability to adapt and change and play different styles than when needed. And Toronto has not done that. And I think, we talk about what needs to change for them. It's not players, it's not personnel, it's just an ability to adapt. And whether that's coaching, if Sheldon Keefe isn't the answer, maybe, or maybe that's just a top-down culture change that what you're doing isn't good enough. And as great as these guys are, it's not just what needs to be done. Maybe they can take a step back from scoring all the points they get and just figure out different ways to win, because that's what's needed, really.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that because I bet a lot of Leafs fans out there are probably like, "Oh, we need to trade so and so, get them out of here, get some new faces in." You don't see teams like the Boston Bruins doing that, especially after they just lost in the first round here after having one of the greatest seasons in NHL history.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to go out and be like, we have to get rid of some of our core players, and not the older ones, but like, the mid young guys out there that are going to be on this team for years to come. They're not going to do that. Yeah, there's a reason that they've always been consistent, and it's because whenever they're done, their season's over, they look back and be like, okay, this is what we have to do to make a change. And they're always a team that's in contention to win a cup every single year.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Toronto, just doesn't have yet, and they need to figure out. But for the Florida side of it too, the one thing I'll say too is like they just beat Toronto every single game. And it's not even like good puck luck or anything like that. It is just going in there and playing 60 minutes of hockey and grinding their nose out and just being like, we got to do whatever we can, get pucks on net, but also to make sure somebody's in front of the net. It's the little things like that where you have
the winning plays. Yep.
On the other side, you have Matthews, Marner, O'Reilly. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly, in my opinion, was the only Leafs player in front of the net because that's his sweet spot, like the entire series. Other than that, I mean, it's like there really isn't much of a fight from their superstars. And I don't know if it's just because they're more natural passers and goal scorers and they haven't, had that type of style in their young career. And since being in the NHL, they haven't had to face that often. That's probably their problem. And it just takes leadership in their locker room, maybe from a coach or whatever, to be like, hey guys, this is where we need to turn it up. It'll be really interesting to watch, but Yeah, basically, like I said, I think Florida won this series outright. It wasn't any type of fluke thing.
No.
They're on a roll right now, and they're going to be in for a good series coming up here. So if you want to say one more thing about Florida, after that we'll go into the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I just want to get one point off here, which is that a lot of the retrospectives from this series was that you look at what Florida did in the offseason. They made a huge splash trade to get Matthew Tkachuk in here because they felt that playoff series was so disappointing that they had to make a wholesale change. And I think that's the wrong lesson to take away from this because it wasn't the personnel that needed to change, it was the culture that needed to change. And had it been changing, it was a process, right? This
Yeah,
the Matthew Tkachuk trade was just an opportunity that they snagged to get younger and more athletic and whatever. But look at what Tampa did in after their 2019 embarrassing playoff loss. They pretty much brought everyone back. There was no gigantic change. They put their heads down. They knew what they needed to change as a group collectively and did it. And Florida made changes as a group collectively. It wasn't just this one trade that was obviously huge and made a huge change to the team. But the reason they're in the spot they're in now is because the players, every single player on this team, has made an adaptation to what needs to happen in the playoffs.
I 100% agree with you. I think you hit it right on the dot there. It's a great way to look at it, and I think everybody should continue to look at all these series the way that you just described it because it's so true, so true.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, let's get into Carolina though. I
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting.
Okay. So I think we lost Matt there for a quick second. So I'll just take over his point here, which is that, you know, Carolina came into this series, which is, I think, against New Jersey Devils, and they played way better than I think
It's
any of
absolutely
us was
crazy to
expecting.
see. Oh, are we there?
Yeah, I think I lost you for a second.
Okay,
We
cool,
good?
cool. I'll get right back into
Okay.
it though. Yeah, I think we're good. So basically, I was just saying the Carolina Hurricanes. They're like their story of this season is they're a good team in the regular season. Then they get into the playoffs. Obviously, with the injuries that they've had, they didn't look great in that first playoff series against the Islanders.
Mhm.
Looked like a beatable team, at least in the second round.
Definitely.
So they get there, and then you have the opposing team in the New Jersey Devils. I think this is kind of what happened. I think New Jersey is like a mid NHL playoff team right now. I think the New York Rangers just did not show up for those games. Now that I think about it,
Mm.
because then watching this past series between the New Jersey Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes, it's not any shade at Carolina. I still think they're a good team, but I didn't think New Jersey had any business being there. I mean,
It
yeah,
did look like that.
it looked like it, and for a team that goes through that has been through injuries, yeah, they've been here before. The Hurricanes are a much older team compared to the Devils. You know, they're going to have the experience. They got guys that are trying to win a cup before they're done with their NHL careers, so they got that motivation there. But at the end of the day, I looked at this past series, and it was more I don't think New Jersey had any business just being in this conversation of winning this series. They kind of, blocked us out by that first series against New York. I just think the Rangers didn't show up, and that's why we got kind of catfished. But other than that, like I said, it's not a diss towards the Hurricanes. I just think they got a much younger and experienced team that they had to face, and this was textbook for them.
Yeah. So looking back, right, you think the Rangers in a playoff style setting are really easy to game plan against,
Yeah.
right? You take away their power play in front of the net, you limit their rush chances. If
Take
Igor,
away Chris Kreider in front of the net, and they won't
yeah,
score.
fair
Yeah,
enough. And
yeah,
if Igor Shesterkin isn't standing on his head, it's not enough. And Igor Shesterkin was great in that series, and it still wasn't enough.
yeah,
So, then the Devils come into the series against the Carolina team that is, I mean, they were an excellent regular season team, even analytics wise, everything just great. and they looked overwhelmed and overmatched. But one, I think Carolina is significantly better coached. I mean, Rod Brind'Amour, we
Yep.
can sing his praises all day long. He's outstanding compared to Gerard Gallant. And I think, too, they didn't make it difficult on the Hurricanes at all. You look in the first round, the Islanders made it tough on them, right? And they extended that series to 6. And there was a hard-fought 6. And it wasn't because they had more talent than the Devils. I think the Devils definitely have more talent. But they made it difficult. Whatever the Hurricanes tried to do, the Islanders made it tough. And so the Hurricane style. It's dump and chase and incredible forecheck, similar to the Panthers. Dump and chase and just have an incredibly strong forecheck and use speed to create your chances off the forecheck. And I think the Devils played into that a little bit too much. So when you look, your main takeaways is this series is over in 5. This was a bad matchup for New Jersey, I think, more than anything, which is that they just did not have the bodies and the mindset and smarts, the experience to be able to take those things away that Carolina loves to do. And so going into the series with the Panthers, I think it's going to be very interesting because these teams play very similar styles. It's a lot of dump and chase and a lot of aggressive forechecking. So I wonder which team's going to come out on top just because of how well is each coach going to game plan against what their strengths are.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I look at this upcoming matchup, oh man, I mean, I think Florida has the more grittiness in their game going into this matchup, and I think they can sustain that for this series. Now, on the other hand, I think they may have a little bit of trouble with just the experience and the coaching that Carolina has had for years,
Yeah.
and how well that they can pass the puck and make plays on drives. Goaltending, I mean, as of right now, I'm going to give it to the Panthers. I think they've been doing really well, especially for playing they've been playing some really good teams too. That's the thing. Really good teams that always produce shots on net.
Mm-hmm.
Other, Carolina playing teams like the Islanders, and then going into New Jersey, a little bit inexperience in New Jersey. Some periods that they really had no shots on net whatsoever. 100%. I think there will be a consistency coming from Florida in that department. So basically, the one key thing I'm going to say is whoever controls their own blue line this entire series, I think will come out victorious, because obviously we know Carolina on their rushes, especially their odd man rushes, or if they're on the PK, they can still be dangerous. You just got to take care of your own blue line. Make sure they don't have that easy access in. Make them go dump and chase. You can win that battle all day with your physicality. For Carolina's point of view, I think the way you have to do is you just have to incorporate better passing plays and make the ice seem way more open than what it actually is. Start getting Florida to overthink things and protecting their own zone. I think that's the way to get them out of their, comfort level. So I'll say, that you got to control your own blue line. I think if you do that, whoever does that the best in this series is going to come out victorious. I just think the goaltending is a pretty good matchup too, both ways. I still like Florida a lot more. But like you said, I love Brind'Amour. I think his coaching tactics will be different. And unlike a team like Toronto, unlike a team in the Islanders, I think he'll be able to adapt to games within each and every period. And that's going to be the difference. I think this is going to be a very, very fun series to watch. I don't know if I can pick a winner right now, but I think it's going to 7 at least.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting point you're making there with the blue line and definitely the coaching. I mean, this is definitely the first series that I think the Florida Panthers will not have a coaching advantage.
Yeah.
Which has been crazy to think of so far that Paul Maurice has been able to outcoach both Sheldon Keefe and Jim Montgomery.
Yeah.
He's been excellent in this playoff series, making adjustments and making changes that have really disrupted a lot of what those two teams' best players do. But in this series, it's a great point about the blue line, but so whose blue line do you trust more in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
Probably Carolina's, right? With Slavin, Burns, and Pesce. You trust those three over nearly anyone's blue line. I don't know how many blue lines can compete with that.
Yeah.
And so just that takeaway alone, I give the edge to Carolina because I think they're going to play similar styles, and I just trust them to make less mistakes at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
I so you know how big I am on just the grittiness style of play, whatever that's chirping the other teams from across your bench, the little extra love taps here and there. I give that to Florida all day. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of game I love. It's the kind of game I want my team to get one day. But I just look at this Hurricanes team, and for a long time now, they have always been a team that has been marked to go to the Cup final at least and miss it.
Mhm.
I think this is their year. I know that it's not your favorite thing to hear right now, but I think they are the most prepared. Um, I I mean, I kind of hope it's Florida. I'm rooting for Florida at this point, but I just think the common core of that group has been there for so long, and they're just adding better players and like a Brett Burns,
Yeah.
great locker room guy, great blue line presence, going to be able to stand up to guys and really shut them down. I think they'll come out victorious, though. I think it will be entertaining, though, and go to 7. Not saying Florida doesn't have a chance, but if I had to bet, I'm betting on Carolina.
Yeah, it's gonna be definitely a close series, but when you look at just why we wrote off Carolina in the first place, it was injuries, right?
Yeah,
Svechnikov out, Pacioretty out, and Teravainen broke his hand in the first round. Looks like he's coming back in this series. Who
yeah,
knows if he's 100%? But I mean, that's an incredibly fast healing process, regardless. And I think, despite those injuries, they've played the same style. They've forechecked the same. They've still been incredibly difficult to deal with. And I think they just have the most answers for what Florida likes to do well. And so, for those reasons, I don't think, right, Boston did a great job of limiting Florida's great advantages, namely Matthew Tkachuk. I don't think Toronto does a particularly great job of really defending anything, let's be honest.
yeah.
Um, I think Carolina does do a great job of it. So as magical as this playoff run has been, it's been outstanding, right? It just feels special. It feels like they have something going that is going to be hard to wipe out whoever the team is. Unless Sergei Bobrovsky can stand on his head for another
Yeah.
series, I don't see how.
Well,
Florida's gonna
that's
this
why I
series.
say 7 though, because
Yeah.
I this series can go any way in my opinion.
Mhm.
It's just if you're going betting odds and you have to pick one, I'm going to go safe route here and I'm going to take Carolina. But
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me? Matty Tkachuk could win you 3 games himself.
He could.
Brandon
He's done it.
Montour could win 2 games himself. Sergey can stand on his head and at least keep you in the series, and then just rely on your other guys. Even your bottom 6 or whoever it may be, special teams. You have players that can come up and really just take advantage. There's going to be a ton of mood swings in these games here. You may see a dominant Carolina team in the first period and then just go absolutely nowhere in the second because Florida
Yeah.
has made the right adjustments and
Mhm.
vice versa. I think that's why it's going to be so entertaining to watch, is because these guys are so good at adjustments.
Yeah.
You are going to have, I mean, if you're a fan of both teams, your head's going to be spinning. But if you're not, you're just going to be like, this is freaking awesome. This is why you watch the games. So I think it's going to be a good series. We'll see what happens. I think it goes to 7, though. How many games for you?
Yeah, I would also say 7. This is going to be a sensationally excellent, hard-fought series that I won't be able to enjoy a second of.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Well, let's stop thinking about it for a little bit. Let's get
Mhm.
into the Western Conference. Let's start off with we'll go the one that just finished off, and that was Dallas and the Kraken. Got to 7.
Got to 7.
Got to 7 games. There were so many times I thought Ottinger was just gone, like not on this planet, in a bad way.
Right?
In a bad way. Just bizarre for me to watch. But what makes them so dangerous, I think, going forward is that even with that, they found a way to win.
Yeah.
They found a way to get the job done. That game 7 too, it wasn't a high scoring thing. It didn't go into overtime. It was just we didn't have really any action through that first period. It was just kind of an even Steven game. And then second period comes around, that's when the goals started to come in. I thought it was phenomenal effort by both teams in that game 7. Just in the series too. I mean, it was kind of lopsided, like I said earlier in the last show. Just different high scoring games. Seattle would win by 3 goals. Dallas would win by 2, back and forth, back and forth.
Mhm.
This was a really odd series to watch. But I was just more absolutely surprised that even though Dallas is the favorite, in my opinion, that they pulled it out just due to how bad Ottinger looked at moments.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so strange to have Jake Onger, who's been one of the best goalies in the league this year, just have 3 out of 7 stinkers and then 4 out of 7 excellent games. There
Yeah.
was no in the middle with him in this series, and it's going forward. It's going to be hard to. You hope that's behind him because it's going to be hard to win series if that what disparity in
Yeah.
performance continues to happen. But you've got to bet on the talent and hope that's behind him. Hope he's in most of them. Maybe they're just taking Seattle too lightly, but they definitely had a great run in them. Some sort of another magical playoff run that just fell short, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think Seattle already received respect from the league when they won their first round. I don't think it was the fact that they were just, oh, we got Seattle. They got through their first round, whatever it may be, big upset, whatever. I think Seattle's just a good team. They're a big physical team. They're a wearing team. It's just odd because I think we're getting into a new day and age of hockey where everybody's tactics can flip in a matter of a 2-game span. Whereas like old school hockey, you play a certain way and you stick to it and you try and be victorious. These guys have so many different ways to operate around the ice nowadays. It's absolutely insane to me. And the thing is, you have some of these older guys trying to do that, who have been in the league for maybe 10 plus years, and they're slowly adapting to it. But I kind of have a feeling that the old school in them is really what is going to win you games down the road. And I think that's what Dallas did in that game 7. They played old school hockey. I didn't think it was anything extra. They weren't trying anything different. Not trying to be too fancy, whatever you want to call it. They were just playing old school hockey. Get the puck, get in the zone. If you have an opportunity to put it on net, go ahead and do it. I thought it was just a really good nitty-gritty game 7 for them to win.
Yep.
I think going forward, when they play Vegas, it can work out. It's going to be really interesting to see how that series unravels. Do you have anything else on this series before we go to Vegas and Edmonton?
Yeah, just that last game 7, I think was very encouraging that they were able to play that extremely tight checking game.
Yeah.
Because they're going to need to play more of those going forward, right? They're not going to be able to get away with this loose style and putting high event hockey over and over again. They're not going to win playoff games like that. So
yeah,
going forward, I think it's nice to know that they can tighten up if need be.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so if we bring in the team that they're going to be facing, Vegas Golden Knights, that series, I think the Oilers got screwed. I'm being dead honest with you. I think the way that Game 6 operated, where the Oilers' historical power play this year,
electric.
They had they were given no penalties in the first period at all. So clean slate. Oilers are up big. I think it was 2-1, whatever it may be. Then you get into the second period. Immediately, and I'll say this too, in the first period itself, I have never seen so many blatant calls in the postseason that it doesn't matter if it's like the toughness, whatever it may be. If it's blatant, you have to call it.
Sure.
Nothing was called in the first period. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. You get into the second period, Oilers are starting to get opportunity on the power play, but immediately taken away. Throw a penalty on the Oilers, and then it is just flipped to everything, all the advantages going towards Vegas. That being said, Skinner is not a championship goaltender.
Mhm.
That is what the Oilers are missing, I feel like. I'll say this too. I mean, Vegas's goalie did not even look good that game 6 as well. So that's why I think it was so up for grabs in my book. And that's why I didn't really like the outcome. Obviously, seeing Marchessault get a hat trick in that game was just it was dominant, right? I mean,
Yeah, he's good.
that's how you win series, right? You need
Mhm.
players like that to step up. I personally think it was kind of taken away from the Oilers, though, just due to the style of the game and how it was operated.
Mhm.
You go from literally the Oilers freaking out. I mean, you see Ekholm and Evander Kane putting their hands on their head, just being like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you calling these penalties on us?" Especially when you had so many blatant ones in the first. That's the reason that I'm upset is because I feel like the Oilers were not able to play their normal game in the second and third period after the first,
Sure.
just because they weren't getting their calls and they almost had to back off. It seemed like they had to take a step back. Once that happened, they started going into the box, and Vegas is a very good team. They're going to capitalize on their power plays and stuff. That's the reason why I think Vegas pulled out that game 6. And I think that's the reason I'm upset is because not saying that Vegas would have won, wouldn't have won in game 7, but I think this series should have deserved to go to a 7. Now, the only argument I'll throw against it is Skinner is not a good goalie whatsoever.
Mm.
It's amazing they got this far with him in net, but man, oh man, he just did not look comfortable. He does not look dominant. Um, I think that's ultimately that one weakness I'll put against them. Other than that, I think this game could have gone to 7, and obviously we know when game 7 hits, anything can happen.
And absolutely, you don't want to bet against Connor McDavid in Game 7.
Yeah,
Your point is well taken. Definitely, the calls were iffy in that Game 6. I think what I see in this is a team similar in a similar situation to Toronto. This is now a few years where they feel like they've done well in the playoffs, but maybe not gotten where they need to. And you look at what they need to change, they've changed so much, right? They bring in Jack Campbell to be the goalie, doesn't work out. They
yeah,
bring in Ekholm to help the defense. He helps, but not enough. You draft all these defensemen, Clefbaum, Nurse over the years, and none seem to really get what they need. Bouchard, another one. It's it's the same idea. You need to win in more than one way, and that power play is as good to be as it's as strong as it can possibly be. It's as close to game ungame plannable as it can be. But you
yeah.
have to be able to score more than one way.
So,
In 5-on-5, they're always getting outplayed.
yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing though for me. It's not more of I'm upset the Oilers didn't get a chance to be on the power play and show their number one power play. For me, it's more of the factor that the way the game was played, blatant calls that should have been at least called in the first period. The Oilers are like, okay, this is the type of game we're playing. Then they get into the second, and when they start to do what the Vegas Golden Knights have been doing to them in the first, and they're getting put in the box, that's that's throwing anybody through a blender, a mental blender, being like, what am I supposed to do? The fact that you see Ekholm, who is not, in my opinion, a very, drama type
No,
individual.
it's not.
Obviously, Evander Kane is, he can
Sure.
go, he can go off, but to see that the I think it was the one boarding, I think they called boarding on Ekholm. It was a love tap, and I've seen worse hits in my day, at least in the last couple years, especially them trying to crack down on player safety. But for what had gone on in the first period, and then Ekholm plays the same way he did in the first and gets called for that. That was the mood switch. Now, I agree with you. You need to be able to adjust to that. But
Hmm.
to me, it seemed like they were in just such a trap from there that there was no coming back from that. Especially when Marchessault, you know, once again, when they get a power play advantage and they score and he gets a hat trick, when you're on the bench of the opposing team, you're like, oh man, just went out there, has 2 power play goals or whatever it may be, maybe 1 power play goal, and he's got a natural hat trick. Yeah, it's going to drive you nuts. It's going to drive you
Yeah,
crazy.
sure.
I don't really know how many teams out there could overcome that, to be honest. So basically, it's not me being sad that the Oilers didn't have enough power play time. Like you can't rely on your special teams to win you series.
No.
It's just I think it took away from the Oilers' regular 5-on-5 play. I think that's really what gets me going. And I will argue a little bit. I do think the Oilers can play 5-on-5. I really do, especially how that game started. They were down 1 goal within the first 30 seconds. An elimination game at your home crowd. Yeah, you're going to be nervous as hell going forward. Yeah, you have the best player in the world to go down the ice 20 seconds later and tie it up. But
Yeah.
then literally 2 minutes or I think another 40 seconds later, they take the lead. So they
Mhm.
were on it. They were on it. I didn't think it was really, you know, and I'll say it one more time. Skinner is not a good goalie. He's not a good goalie. But I think that the Oilers truly had an opportunity to win this game. And I think this game should deserve to go to 7. Now, when that happens, yeah, it's in Vegas. I think I'm going to pick Vegas. I just thought the ending of it was a little awkward.
Yeah, you never want a game to be decided by all these penalties, especially in the playoffs, right? You gotta hope for more consistency. I think overall, if you don't want to call late stuff, don't call late stuff. It's the
Yeah.
playoffs. Things get tough, and it's been that way for ever. Unless you're getting absolutely destroyed. If someone's concussed, they're not calling anything, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's fine, but it's got to stay that way for sure.
Yeah. I think also, too, that it was Wes McCauley, I think, out
Yeah.
there. I think
Isn't
that's
it
what
funny
got.
how many referee names we know because we all have our own individual agendas against them? I
I,
know
I know.
it's TJ Luxmore. We
Oh, God.
do
Yeah.
not
I
trust
know.
that guy.
I
Or
know.
Francois Saint Laurent has a beef with Paul Maurice for whatever reason. It's
Yeah. I know.
unbelievable.
I mean, when you're a referee trying to make yourself a big deal
It's
and an
crazy.
NHL All-Star game, yeah, I think we need to tone it down a little bit. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, but congrats to Vegas. I think this is going to be a good matchup. We got the Vegas Golden Knights and the Dallas Stars.
They're good.
This is going to be interesting because I think this is strictly coming down to goaltending.
Really.
Going forward, I think you got to see what Ottinger can rebound from after having that iffy series. Yes, he won the amount of games he needed to, but then you look at Vegas. Um, Obviously, they have Jonathan Quick there, and then I'm trying to think of
Dude,
their backup. Who's their backup?
I think Aiden
Or
Hill is
Aiden
taking
Hill.
that nets.
Yeah, he's taking the net. And in that game 6 against the Oilers, he did not look sharp either.
You don't think so? I
And
think
There,
he
there
played
were
a pretty good
times that
game.
there were I'm telling you, just based off of the first period alone and the way that game started, and if that style of play was played the rest of the game, and maybe a couple tweaks here and there, I think it's a lot closer of a game than you actually think.
The first
Um,
McDavid goal was weak for sure.
yes. Oh God, yeah, absolutely. So I personally think we're going to be looking at which goaltenders can stand on their feet here. I love the production from both teams offensively. I think they're phenomenal at that. If you look at the physicality, I think you can go both ways with it too. You have a really experienced Vegas team now with a really experienced Dallas team. I think you got some of these older guys on Dallas that are, you know, kind of listed as more skilled guys, but they can get nasty. I mean, a
Yeah.
guy like Joe Pavelski, you don't really think of him as getting, really physical and stuff out there, but he can throw some arms around and really make you work for defending every little inch of ice out there.
Mhm.
And then the same thing going back with Vegas. I mean, you look at their captain and Mark Stone. That guy is unbelievable at all around hockey. And I think
Yeah,
that's what makes him a great captain. I think that's the reason why the team is so successful is because he's a guy that can take it all on his shoulders. And from there, I think you look at there's such an there's an even play between Vegas's and Dallas's older guys and their younger guys that they have. It's so evenly distributed. I mentioned a guy like Robertson with Dallas, and then you look at older guys like Ben and Sagan. I think and Pavelski. It's a really good, you know, different type of core that they got there. Then you look at Vegas, right? You got Mark Stone, who's an older guy now. And then you look at a younger guy in Jack Eichel, right? He is going to be there, not playing the crazy amount of minutes he used to play in his younger career in Buffalo. And now he can take that to his advantage. He's going to be that power play guy sitting at that point, waiting for either an elite pass or just a rocket of a one-timer on those power plays, and they'll capitalize. I think both teams do a really good on the PK too, at least in these hard-fought situational games. I think this game is going to be very close or this series is going to be very close as well.
yeah,
I'm going to say 6. It could go to 7. I'm going to say 6 just to change it up though. I'm going to take Dallas though.
yeah,
I think Dallas is the team to go forward here. I've liked what they've overcome in the playoffs more than what Vegas has.
for sure. And I do think Dallas has more offensive weapons to display in this series compared to Vegas. I do think they probably have a goaltending advantage as well. I know it's hard to rely on Jake Onger after that weird up and down series he had, but I still would give them the edge over an unproven Aiden Hill or an old Jonathan Quick, who we talked about. I'm, I don't know. I mean, with Wyatt Johnson emerging for Dallas, it makes a lot of sense. They have so many options that they can go to and rely on. I think I'll take Vegas in 6 because I love the structure that Bruce Cassidy has implemented, right? They just got finished with a series against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on the best power play of all time and came out pretty solid in that. And so I look at now what they have to go against. I think they see this as their biggest defensive hurdle was just over, right? Everything is easier for their defense now going forward. And they can rely on their depth of Marchessault and Riley Smith and whoever else you want to throw on, Keegan Colasar. All of those depth pieces can step up, and it doesn't have to be the Mark Stone, Jack Eichel show going up against Dallas.
Yeah, and obviously, I think it just sticks with them in Vegas, them having that stereotype of the what did they call them when they first became the team? What was it? It was like the Forgotten Kids or something like that. Like
Oh,
what was it? What was it? I'm forgetting it right now. They gave them the nickname like the Rejects or something like
yeah,
that
something
because
like that.
obviously they weren't wanted, they weren't protected by their teams. I think that has like lost its touch, but I feel like they hang on to it. They're trying to hang on to it. That's basically what I'm getting at. I think the
Mhm.
league has lost it, and they've given them respect because of what they've done since being a franchise. But I think that's literally the type of mindset they have in their locker room. I mean, you can mention a guy like William Carrier too for Vegas, just a really good individual who knows his place on that roster and gives you 110% every single time he's out there.
Yeah.
He's a really good defender. He's a really good, he can rush the net if you need to, separate space. I think there's a lot of good depth on the Vegas team. I'm just going to go for I think there's a hungrier, some older individuals on that Dallas team. I guess I'm just going for like the Pavelskis, the Bens, the Tyler Sagans. I feel like that this is like their opportunity to get back to the Cup final, and
Yeah.
that I think they will realize it.
Yeah.
They'll wake up and be like, guys, there's not enough time left in my career where I can come back and do this. I think they're gonna want it more. than Vegas, because I think Vegas, they kind of realize, yeah, the cap scenario down the road is not going to be too friendly, but they at least have their young talent that is going to be there for many years to come, unlike
Definitely.
Dallas. So I'm going to take Dallas in 6. So you've got Vegas and you got Carolina in your Cup final.
Mm-hmm.
Who you got?
Carolina.
And how many?
7.
7.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, I've got Carolina and Dallas, and I'm going to take Carolina. Actually, no, sorry. I hate to say it because I really do hate Dallas, but I'm going to take Dallas. I'm going to take Dallas in 6.
All right.
Yeah. It should be an interesting one. I think technically, I think right now the remaining teams, I think Carolina is the favorite, I would say, going forward, just due to the coaching, the type of team that they have. I think the lone wolf, though, that's not the favorite, I would say it's your Florida Panthers still, which is honestly kind of crazy to me, just based off of everything that they've done.
That's the spot they like to be in, though. They feel comfortable as the underdog.
I think they should feel really, really comfortable, because I bet everybody's talking. If I had to guess, I think that everybody's standings the rest of the way, it's Carolina, Vegas, Dallas, Florida. I would think that's the order it goes in. What about you?
That's not what I'd put them in, but I understand that's probably the consensus. Yeah.
I wouldn't put them in that either, but I think that's what the mainstream media is probably going to go out there and say.
I think, yeah, you're probably right. I don't think ESPN gives them much credit these days.
No, but yeah, it'll be really fun to watch these conference championships. I hope we're in for some really good series here. We'll see what happens. So, let's touch up on one more thing though before we end the show.
Let's do it.
It's a very sad moment. Very sad moment. Obviously, we heard the news about the Arizona Coyotes. God, I mean, it just sucks because like they've tried to make it work in Arizona for so long.
Yep.
And I understand they got to do whatever they can to make money. But for me, a team that like, I don't know, I feel like everybody kind of roots for Arizona. Like when their teams aren't playing, they're like, oh, I want to see them do well. I want to see this team develop and get good. I think it'd be great to have a good team out in like in a state like Arizona.
Yeah.
And then just the history, their jerseys. I mean, I think they're one of the best jerseys in the league, right? Cool. You know, and for all that to them pull the plug on their operations going forward, just crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. What are your thoughts on it? How are you taking this news?
You know, it's a bummer for sure. You know, I think we've talked about last year. It reminds me of the mid-2000s Florida Panthers. You know, it just seems like a team that cannot get off the ground there. And it's a bummer, right? You look at the vote, it wasn't even close. And I thought it was kind of an interesting proposal overall. But,
yeah,
you know, it didn't work out. And no more Tempe Coyotes, I suppose. I don't see a path forward for them at this point. They've tried everything they could. I don't know. Is the relocation... Is it going to happen? Do we think it's going to happen after this?
I think this is more likely than any type of rumor we've seen in the past, literally since Atlanta, you know, the Atlanta to Winnipeg. I think it's legit. I'm upset about it because I just like Arizona, you know. I mean, wish they would do better. I think they were one of the only other teams that did a whiteout when they made the playoffs. How long ago? You know, just I think it can be a really interesting market. They just haven't had the success there, and they need to see that. They needed to see the success in the past 5 to 10 years for them to remain there, I guess, and they just haven't. Relocation.
Yeah.
We've heard the rumors prior to this news that they were going to try for Atlanta again.
Is it? Yeah.
I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's there's no way that you try a franchise there twice and it fails twice and then try it a third time.
Yeah.
If they did, I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah,
Um,
what does the NHL want to do? Do they want to play it safe and just do Quebec City and call it, or do they want to try another southern market like Houston, maybe?
I don't think it's a big enough market. If anything, I think they're going to try and go to a bigger city. The one I did hear, I think it was from Elliot Friedman.
Mm.
I think they said Salt Lake City.
Oh yeah.
Um, I saw that come up. I don't even know if they're big enough to take on this responsibility of a new franchise. I'm not too knowledgeable about the area itself, but I I, I just can't see if they were to relocate. I think the NHL and the way that it is being operated right now would just take the big leap and go to the big one of the biggest cities they can find, no matter where it is, and develop a new franchise.
I mean, do they double up on a city? I mean, LA basically has two, New York has two, almost three if you count New Jersey.
The question is, do you think that let me ask you this. Do you think that they would consider throwing a team up in Canada or the United States?
I there's not.
I think it would trend towards the United States
I
just because
think so too. I
it's a
don't
bigger
think
landmass. The
Williams.
more teams are closer. It
Mhm.
would be less travel for them.
I think they
I
prefer the U.S.
I think so too. I'm just trying to think of other states that you could really throw them in, and even if it is you're trying to make a duel. I thought Texas, obviously, you could have the Dallas Stars, maybe go for Houston, like you said. That
It's not bad.
it's not bad. It's
I don't know what
I don't
their
know.
appetite is. I really don't.
I really don't know either.
We knew Seattle
Obviously,
would be great. Seattle was a home run, but
yeah,
that's taken.
yeah, and for them obviously it's got to be a team from the West, though. I mean
Yeah,
that's the thing. That's
you
what
gotta
you're
say that.
looking at, unless they're trying to restructure the conferences down the
Is
road.
St. Louis an option? It's possible.
I have no idea. I have
Honestly,
no
the place
idea.
that makes the most sense is Phoenix. That's the place that makes the most sense, objectively speaking, right? The
Yeah,
big enough urban area, nothing super close by. It made so much sense and it just doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. It's either way. It's going to be so interesting to see what happens with this
Mhm.
team going forward, this franchise going forward. Um, And I think it's just kind of odd that, especially from what we were used to growing up, we just basically saw, new franchise coming in because the league needed to expand it, right?
Yeah.
It seems like right now for us, and at least in my opinion, I don't think the league needs to expand. I mean, I don't think you need more teams right now. Or if you are going to get more teams, I think you got to do a couple, in one season or whatever it may be. And that's very hard to do because obviously with the expansion draft and um, just the way that the draft works, it's so different. And here's the thing that I also want to mention really quick. The reason why I think they go to the biggest city that they can get in the United States is because they look at what has happened with Vegas and Seattle in the past expansion drafts. It it does not hurt for new franchises, or even if it is an existing franchise and they're just moving, it does not hurt them cap wise as
Mhm.
much as it used to.
Yeah.
That's why I think some of these new franchises or teams that have moved to different cities have had better success is just because of the way it works out. And that the cap is not really that targeted to them. I mean, especially if you're talking an expansion team. I know we're talking about a team right now that's possibly just getting relocated, but if they're trying to open up new franchises down the road, like say they do move Arizona, but they want to bring in a new franchise. Like I said, before this news came out, they were thinking about opening up a new one in Atlanta. I think they got to restructure a way to do this expansion draft because these teams that become new are immediately at least decent.
Yeah, that's the thing,
They're
right?
not bad. They're not bad. And you have all these other teams that have been in the league for so long that are struggling and they just can't get out of it. And it's due to their cap issues. But those expansion teams, they've got a loophole there. And I think it's just a really interesting topic to bring up and just at least be aware of as we get into, this final push of the NHL playoffs. And as soon as that's over and the Cup final is over, I think this offseason is going to be more interesting than we've ever seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some questions to answer by the league, and I really wonder what they do. I hope they don't expand because I think they have the talent for it on paper.
Yeah.
I like the depth and the talent current pool that we have now. I like how deep teams are. I think that makes for better hockey overall. So I do hope they stay at 32, but I don't know what they have to figure out Arizona. They do.
The only thing that can save Arizona at this point is Austin Matthews accepting a trade there. So,
Oh boy, June 1st.
Let's see. But that's going to wrap up our show, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with more action next week, and let's get ready for some conference playoff series. Should be a good one.
Let's do it.
We'll see you guys.